Your brain is a magnificent, chaotic attic, filled with things you've collected over a lifetime. But let's be honest, a lot of it is junk, dusty old facts that are completely wrong. Today, we're not just tidying up, we're taking a flamethrower to the clutter. Prepare to have 49 pieces of common knowledge you hold dear exposed as the utter nonsense they truly are. 1. That old chestnut about needing 8 glasses of water a day? It's one of the most persistent and frankly boring myths out there. The idea that your body operates on a strict 8-glass quota is total nonsense. You get a massive amount of your hydration from food and other beverages, from your morning coffee to that soup you had for lunch. So, if you've been parading around with a giant water bottle, feeling superior and hydrated while silently judging everyone else, you can stop. Your body isn't a delicate flower. It's perfectly capable of figuring out when it's thirsty without you micromanaging it into oblivion. 2. We've all been there, standing in the dairy aisle, wondering if paying extra for brown eggs makes us a better person. Well, it doesn't. The color of an eggshell is purely cosmetic, determined by the chicken's breed and nothing more. It has zero impact on nutritional value. Believing brown eggs are healthier is like thinking a car painted green gets better gas mileage. It's a brilliant piece of marketing that makes you feel virtuous while spending more money. So yes, if you've been buying brown eggs exclusively, you have been successfully hustled by a chicken. 3. For anyone who's been force-feeding themselves carrots in a quest for superhuman night vision, I'm sorry to burst your bubble. You will not develop the ability to see in the dark. You will, however, develop the ability to turn orange. This very real and very weird condition is called carotenemia. While medically harmless, it does make you look like you had a catastrophic run-in with a bottle of cheap spray tan. So unless your goal is to cosplay as a traffic cone or a certain former president, you might want to diversify your vegetable intake. 4. Put a hat on. You lose 80% of your body heat through your head. We can all hear our mothers screaming this. Well, you can tell her she was wrong. This myth comes from a deeply flawed old military study. The reality is far less dramatic. You lose heat from any part of your body that's exposed to the cold. Your head isn't some magical heat chimney. So if you're standing outside in a snowstorm wearing just a t-shirt and a beanie, don't be surprised when you get hypothermia. You don't need a better hat, you absolute genius, you need a coat. 5. The charming playground tale about a bisected earthworm becoming 2 new worms is a lie that has traumatized generations of kids with shovels. The truth is much more gruesome. While the head end of some species can regenerate a new tail, the abandoned rear end does not magically sprout a brain and start a new life. It simply writhes around in what we can only assume is confused agony before it dies. So unless you get your kicks from performing pointless and grimly fatal surgery on garden invertebrates, maybe just leave them alone. 6. Thanks to Hollywood, we picture owls as creepy, head-spinning demons from a horror movie. The reality is slightly less supernatural, but still deeply impressive. An owl can't do a full 360-degree rotation, but it can manage about 270 degrees in either direction. This is thanks to having extra vertebrae and a wild circulatory system that prevents it from cutting off blood to its own brain. It's a triumph of evolution that lets them look over their shoulder, not a sign that it's time to find a priest. 7. We mine for gold deep in the earth, so it must be from Earth, right? Wrong. Our planet's gold is basically alien treasure. The vast majority of the gold accessible on the crust didn't form here. It was delivered to us via a relentless bombardment of meteorites billions of years ago. So that wedding ring on your finger isn't just a symbol of eternal love. It's a piece of an ancient cosmic catastrophe. Suddenly, that piece of jewelry has a much cooler backstory than anyone else's at the dinner party. 8. Every child who ever accidentally swallowed a piece of gum has lived in fear of the legendary 7-year intestinal blockage. You can finally release that deep-seated childhood trauma. Your body doesn't take 7 years to digest gum. It doesn't really digest it at all. The gum base is indigestible, but your system doesn't just let it set up camp and pay rent in your colon. It simply recognizes it as a foreign object, shrugs, and sends it on a one-way trip through your system with everything else. There's no 7-year grudge match happening in your gut. 9. The idea that coffee dehydrates you is a myth peddled by people who probably enjoy ruining mornings. Sure, coffee is a mild diuretic, which means it makes you pee a little more. But guess what coffee is mostly made of? Water. The net effect is still hydration. The amount of liquid you take in far outweighs the tiny bit extra you lose. So, if some wellness guru tries to tell you to swap your glorious morning cup for a sad glass of lemon water, you can smile, take a long sip of your brew, and politely ignore them. This isn't a negotiation, it's a sacred ritual. 10. Let's clear up a huge historical misconception. People in the Middle Ages did not believe the Earth was flat. That whole narrative is largely a 19th century invention to make our ancestors seem more primitive. In reality, any educated person from the time of the ancient Greeks onward knew the world was a sphere. Christopher Columbus wasn't bravely sailing against a tide of flat earthers. He was just really, really bad at math. His problem wasn't proving the world was round. It was drastically underestimating its size. That, and probably a severe lack of decent snacks for the journey. 11. We've been sold a romantic lie about penguins. They've been marketed as the ultimate monogamous couple, waddling hand in flipper into the sunset. The reality is much colder and more brutal, like a high-stakes corporate performance review. Many penguin species are serially monogamous, and some will absolutely divorce a partner if the previous breeding season was a failure. Imagine getting dumped by your penguin spouse because your nest-building skills were subpar or you didn't bring back enough fish. It's a ruthless dating scene down there in Antarctica. 12. Here's a classic piece of teenage folklore. Shaving makes your hair grow back thicker and darker. It's completely false. When you shave, you're cutting the hair at its thickest point, leaving a blunt, stubbly edge. A brand new hair, on the other hand, grows with a fine, tapered tip. That's why the regrowth feels coarse and looks more noticeable. You're not slowly transforming into a werewolf every time you pick up a razor. It's just an optical and textural illusion, so you'll have to find a better excuse to let it all grow out. 13. Poor Napoleon Bonaparte. The man conquered most of Europe, reshaped Western law, and was a military genius. Yet all we remember is that he was supposedly short. He wasn't. At around 5 feet 6 inches, he was actually slightly taller than the average Frenchman of his time. The myth was largely a product of British propaganda and a confusion between French and British units of measurement. The term Napoleon complex is essentially a 200-year-old smear campaign that somehow stuck. The guy had 99 problems, but being short wasn't one of them. 14. If you think a goldfish will conveniently grow to fit the size of its tiny bowl, you've been misled by pet stores that want to sell you cute, cruel accessories. Goldfish do not have a built-in size governor. In the right conditions with enough space, they can grow to be the size of a football. Your tiny goldfish isn't staying small because it's a special, bowl-sized breed. It's because its growth is stunted in what is essentially a fishy version of a closet. Congratulations, you've been keeping your pet in the aquatic equivalent of a grim New York City studio apartment. 15. The iconic pink flamingo isn't born fabulous. It comes into the world a drab, boring gray. Its famous vibrant color isn't natural, it's dietary. Flamingos get their pink and orange hues from carotenoid pigments in the algae and crustaceans they eat. They are quite literally what they eat. If a flamingo decided to go on a junk food binge of, say, bread and French fries, it would eventually fade back to its dull gray self. It's a living, breathing testament to the power of a good diet. 16. The entire detox and juice cleanse industry is built on a very expensive lie. You don't need to spend $200 on a week's supply of blended kale and celery to cleanse your body. You already have a highly effective 24/7 detoxification system built right in. It's called your liver and kidneys. These organs are absolute powerhouses at filtering out waste. Drinking overpriced green juice does absolutely nothing to help them. You're just paying a fortune to be hungry while your liver sits back, wondering why you don't trust it to do its job. 17. Here's a fact to completely warp your perception of history. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, lived closer in time to the launch of the first iPhone than she did to the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The pyramids were already over 2,500 years old when she was born. They were as ancient to her as the Roman Empire is to us. So, any image you have of her hanging around during the pyramid building era is completely wrong. She was dealing with Roman generals and political intrigue, not overseeing ancient construction projects. 18. We call smart people wise owls, but it's a terrible compliment. Despite their majestic, all-knowing appearance, owls are actually kind of dumb. Their skulls are packed with massive eyes and the structures needed to support them, leaving very little room for brain power. Their brain-to-body size ratio is surprisingly small, and they are notoriously bad at problem-solving compared to other birds like crows or parrots. They're less like wise old professors and more like beautiful, feathered security cameras that are great at one thing, turning their heads and looking cool. 19. That old wives' tale about glass being a slow-moving liquid? It's a beautiful, poetic lie. The proof always cited is that windows in old cathedrals are thicker at the bottom. But this isn't because the glass has been gracefully flowing downwards for centuries like a geological waterfall. The boring truth is that medieval glass manufacturing was just terrible. Glassmakers couldn't produce perfectly flat panes, so when it came time for installation, sensible glaziers simply put the thicker, heavier edge at the bottom. Your window isn't slowly melting. It was just installed that way by a guy named Bartholomew 500 years ago. 20. After a satisfying meal at an American Chinese restaurant, you crack open a fortune cookie to receive a vague piece of wisdom. It feels like an ancient tradition, right? Wrong. Fortune cookies are about as authentically Chinese as a cheeseburger. They were actually invented and popularized in California in the early 20th century, likely by Japanese-American bakers. So, that profound message telling you to embrace change, or providing you with a set of lottery numbers was conceived in the good old US of A. It's a purely American invention wrapped in the guise of foreign mystique, which is honestly the most American thing ever. 21. You've probably heard that every time you have a drink, you're committing a small-scale massacre of your brain cells. It's a convenient scare tactic, but it's not true. While heavy, chronic alcohol use can damage the brain, a moderate happy hour isn't killing off your neurons one by one. Alcohol primarily messes with the connections between the cells, the dendrites, disrupting communication. It's more like your brain's internet service is getting laggy, not that the entire server farm is burning down. So you can put down the guilt along with your glass because your brain cells are more resilient than you think. 22. We love the image of a genius having a sudden, world-changing epiphany, like the story of an apple falling on Newton's head. A similar myth surrounds Einstein, suggesting he just daydreamed his way to the theory of relativity. The reality was far less romantic and involved years of grinding, painstaking mathematical work. It was a marathon of equations, dead ends, and probably enough coffee to power a small city. Genius isn't always a lightning bolt of inspiration. More often, it's the sheer frustrating slog of trying 1,000 things that don't work until one finally does. 23. Sugar gets all the blame for rotting your teeth, but it's not the direct culprit. Sugar is more like an accomplice in a crime. By itself, it can't do much. But it is the favorite food of certain bacteria that live in your mouth. When you eat sweets, these bacteria have a feast, and as a thank you, produce acid as a waste product. It's this acid that eats away at your tooth enamel and causes cavities. So, think of it less like sugar melting your teeth and more like you're funding a tiny acid factory in your mouth. Your toothbrush's job is to shut it down. 24. Generations of parents have scolded their kids for reading in dim light, warning it will ruin their eyesight forever. It's a myth that seems to make sense, but it's just not true. Reading under the covers with a flashlight might give you a headache and temporary eye strain because your eyes have to work harder to focus, but it causes no permanent damage to your vision. The most likely reason for this parental decree wasn't a deep concern for your ophthalmological health, but a deep desire for you to go to sleep and stop burning through expensive batteries. 25. One of the most popular did you know facts to share at a party is that toilet water spins in different directions in the northern and southern hemispheres due to the Coriolis effect. Well, it's time to retire that one from your arsenal. While the Coriolis effect is a real force that influences massive systems like hurricanes and ocean currents, Its impact on the water in your toilet bowl is so infinitesimally small, it's completely irrelevant. The direction of the flush vortex is determined entirely by the shape of the bowl and the angle of the water jets. Sorry. 26. The image of a cow peacefully snoozing while standing up in a field is a staple of pastoral scenes, but it's only half the story. Cows can and do doze and nap while on their feet, thanks to a system of ligaments that allows them to lock their legs. But for deep, restorative REM sleep, the kind where you have dreams, they absolutely have to lie down. You can't enter that dream state without full muscle relaxation. So, while they are masters of the standing power nap, even a one-eyed 500-pound bovine needs to get off its feet to properly dream of greener pastures. 27. You might think a massive iron structure like the Eiffel Tower is a static, unchanging landmark, but it's actually alive with movement. Thanks to a phenomenon called thermal expansion, the tower can grow or shrink by up to 6 inches throughout the year. On hot summer days, the iron heats up and expands, making the tower taller. In the cold of winter, it contracts and gets shorter. So if you've ever visited Paris in August and thought the tower looked particularly majestic and tall, it wasn't just the champagne, it was basic physics. 28. We picture Vikings as hairy, unwashed brutes, caked in the mud and gore of their latest raid. Historical and archaeological evidence paints a very different, much cleaner picture. Vikings were obsessed with grooming. They bathed at least once a week, a frequency considered shockingly hygienic by many other Europeans of the era. Excavations of Viking sites regularly turn up combs, tweezers, ear spoons, and razors. They were meticulous about their hair and beards. So the reality is that the Viking raider who just landed on your shore was probably better groomed than you are right now. 29. It's one of the most repeated facts on Earth. The Great Wall of China is the only man-made object visible from space. Astronauts have been debunking this for decades, but the myth persists. The wall is incredibly long, but it's also very narrow and made of materials that blend into the surrounding landscape. From low Earth orbit, it's practically invisible. Believing you can see the Great Wall from space is like believing you can see a single strand of hair from across a football stadium. It's just not happening. 30. What if I told you there's no such thing as a coffee bean? That dark, aromatic thing you grind up every morning isn't a bean at all. It's a seed. Coffee beans are the pits found inside the bright red fruit of the coffee plant, known as a coffee cherry. So, technically, that beverage you're addicted to is a hot brewed fruit seed extract. It sounds infinitely more sophisticated, doesn't it? You're not just a coffee drinker, you're a connoisseur of roasted tropical fruit seeds. Tell that to your barista next time and see what happens. 31. Waking up to the sound of birds singing at dawn feels poetic and peaceful. But the birds aren't chirping a gentle hello to the sun. What you're hearing is called the dawn chorus, and it's basically a massive, feathery turf war. The male birds are screaming at the top of their lungs to aggressively declare their territory and broadcast their fitness to potential mates. It's the avian equivalent of a bunch of guys standing on their front lawns yelling, "This is my spot, I am very strong, and all other guys should stay away." It's less a song, more a threat. 32. Ask anyone to name the tallest mountain in the world, and they'll say Mount Everest. And by one measurement, height above sea level, they're right. But if we're talking about the tallest mountain from its base to its summit, the title actually goes to Mauna Kea in Hawaii. The catch is that most of Mauna Kea's massive bulk is hidden underwater in the Pacific Ocean. It's over 33,000 feet tall from its base on the ocean floor, making Everest look a bit less impressive. Everest just gets all the fame because its entire height is out there for everyone to see, being flashy and hogging the spotlight. 33. The 5-second rule is a universally accepted law of physics that allows us to salvage fallen food, right? It's a complete and utter fabrication we tell ourselves to feel better about eating something that has touched the floor. Bacteria don't politely wait for a 5-second countdown before hopping onto your delicious slice of pizza. The transfer of germs is instantaneous. The moment your food hits the ground, it's colonized. So, next time you drop a cookie and quickly snatch it up, just own it. You're not following a rule. You're just making a calculated and slightly disgusting risk. 34. The Statue of Liberty stands as a proud green icon of America, but she wasn't always that color. When she first arrived from France, Lady Liberty was a dazzling, shiny copper, like a brand new penny. The iconic sea green patina she sports today is the result of about 30 years of oxidation from the salty New York air. It's not rust or neglect, it's a natural chemical reaction that created a protective layer. So, she didn't just decide to go green for environmental reasons. She underwent one of the slowest, most majestic makeovers in history, courtesy of basic chemistry. 35. Your grandma probably warned you that cracking your knuckles would give you gnarled, arthritic hands. Well, grandma was wrong. That deeply satisfying or deeply annoying popping sound has nothing to do with your bones grinding into dust. It's simply the sound of gas bubbles, mostly nitrogen, bursting in the synovial fluid that lubricates your joints. While numerous studies have found no link between knuckle cracking and arthritis, it does have one proven side effect. It makes you incredibly irritating to be around. So go ahead, crack away, but don't be surprised when you're asked to leave the room. 36. If you've been avoiding sushi because you have a strict no raw fish policy, you've been living a lie. The word sushi has nothing to do with raw fish. It actually refers to the vinegared rice that serves as the base for the dish. The toppings, known as nida, can be anything from cooked eel to cucumber to avocado. Raw fish is a common ingredient, but it's entirely optional. You have been needlessly denying yourself an entire category of delicious food over a simple misunderstanding. Now go out there, order a California roll, and rejoin society. 37. The carrots you've been eating your whole life have been lying to you. They weren't always orange. For centuries, carrots came in a variety of colors, including purple, yellow, white, and even black. The bright orange carrot we know today is basically a piece of political branding. Dutch farmers in the 17th century are credited with cultivating them as a tribute to the House of Orange, which led the fight for Dutch independence. They became so popular that the other colors faded into obscurity. So yes, your salad is a product of patriotic propaganda. 38. When you think of the world's largest desert, you picture the vast, scorching sands of the Sahara. That's incorrect. The largest desert on Earth is actually Antarctica. It might seem strange to call a continent covered in ice a desert, but the definition of a desert is a place with very little precipitation. Antarctica is the driest continent on the planet, receiving less rain and snow than the Sahara. It's a polar desert. So the biggest desert in the world isn't hot and sandy. It's a frozen, barren wasteland. Geography is full of these wonderful little plot twists. 39. The image of lemmings blindly following each other off a cliff in a mass suicide pact is one of the most enduring myths about the animal kingdom. And we have Walt Disney to thank for it. This morbid misconception was popularized by a 1958 Disney documentary called White Wilderness, in which the filmmakers, unable to find any actual lemming suicide, literally herded the poor creatures off a cliff into a river to get their dramatic shot. The reality is that lemmings just have population booms and sometimes accidentally fall off things during mass migrations. They aren't suicidal. They were just victims of cinematic fraud. 40. The tarantula has a fearsome reputation, looking like something that crawled straight out of a nightmare. But its danger level is wildly exaggerated. For a human, a tarantula's bite is not lethal. Its venom is generally considered to be no more potent than a bee or wasp sting. It'll be painful, you'll get some swelling, but you're not going to die unless you have a rare and severe allergic reaction. They are also incredibly reluctant to bite, preferring to run away or flick irritating hairs as a defense. They're not tiny death machines. They're just big, hairy homebodies that want to be left alone. 41. There's a special kind of person who goes to the doctor with a common cold and demands antibiotics. Don't be that person. Antibiotics are designed to kill bacteria, full stop. A cold is caused by a virus. Taking antibiotics for a virus is like trying to put out a fire with a sandwich. It's completely useless and makes a mess. Worse yet, every time you misuse antibiotics, you contribute to the rise of antibiotic-resistant superbugs. You're not curing yourself. You're actively helping to train the next generation of bacteria to be stronger. That's not a great legacy to leave behind. 42. You've likely heard the claim that sharks don't get cancer, making them some kind of perfect, invincible marine predators. This is a complete myth, and a particularly cynical one. The idea was popularized in the 1990s by a book written to help sell shark cartilage supplements as an alternative cancer cure. Not only is this scientifically false, sharks do, in fact, get cancer, including tumors in their cartilage, but the resulting demand for cartilage decimated shark populations worldwide. The only thing this myth was good for was making money for a supplement company while slaughtering incredible animals. 43. That little flutter you feel in your chest when you sneeze has led many to believe your heart momentarily stops. It doesn't. Your heart does not take a break. Ever. The powerful force of a sneeze increases the pressure inside your chest, which can briefly alter the rhythm of your blood flow and cause your heart's regular beat to feel off for a second. But it never stops beating. So, when someone says, "bless you," they aren't performing a miniature resurrection. They're just being polite about the loud explosion of air and germs that just came out of your face. 44. Let's talk about the majestic poster child of the Arctic, the polar bear, famous for its brilliant white coat. Well, prepare to have your entire perception of them shattered. Their fur isn't white at all. Each individual hair is completely transparent and hollow. This incredible structure scatters and reflects all visible light, which our brains perceive as white. But the real mind-blowing part is what's underneath. If you were to shave a polar bear, a task I strongly advise you not to attempt, you would find that its skin is jet black. This allows it to absorb as much heat as possible from the sun. They're essentially a black animal wearing a sophisticated, transparent thermal coat. 45. We've had the milk-build strong bones message drilled into us since childhood, largely thanks to decades of brilliant marketing. But drinking gallons of milk won't give you an unbreakable, adamantium skeleton. While milk is a good source of calcium, which is essential for bone health, it's not a magic potion. Studies have shown that countries with the highest rates of dairy consumption also have some of the highest rates of osteoporosis. Factors like exercise, vitamin D intake, and overall diet play a far more significant role. You can't just drink your way to stronger bones. 46. Here's a piece of botanical trivia to ruin everything you thought you knew about your morning smoothie. Bananas do not grow on trees. The plant that produces bananas may look like a tree, but it's technically a giant herbaceous flowering plant. A banana tree is the world's largest herb, and the banana itself is classified as a berry. So that thing you're peeling isn't a tree fruit. You're enjoying a berry from a giant herb. It sounds far more exotic and complicated than it needs to be, but now you know the truth. 47. The chameleon is nature's master of disguise, changing its color to perfectly blend in with its surroundings, right? That's mostly a cartoon myth. While some color change is used for camouflage, a chameleon's primary reason for shifting shades is to communicate with other chameleons, assert dominance, or regulate its body temperature. It's less about hiding and more about expressing its feelings or warming up in the sun. Think of it less as a stealth ninja and more as a highly emotional, walking mood ring that wears its heart on its skin. 48. The notion that a goldfish has a 3-second memory is a complete insult to our fin friends. It's a convenient excuse we use to justify keeping them in tiny, boring bowls. In reality, studies have shown that goldfish can remember things for at least 5 months. They can recognize their owners, be trained to perform simple tricks, and remember feeding schedules. So, when your goldfish swims to the top of the tank as you approach, it's not a random act. It knows who you are, and it remembers that you are the bringer of food. It's probably judging you right now. 49. The classic image of a matador waving a red cape to infuriate a bull is iconic, but it's built on a false premise. Bulls don't hate the color red. In fact, they can't even see it. Like all cattle, they are red-green colorblind. What's actually enraging the bull is not the color of the cape, but the threatening waving motion of the fabric. You could wave a white, blue, or polka-dotted cape at it, and you'd get the same angry response. Honestly, if someone flapped a giant piece of cloth in your face while a stadium of people cheered, you'd probably charge too. The bull isn't enraged by a color, it's just setting some very clear boundaries. So, there you have it. 49 corrections to the faulty programming running in your head. I'm willing to bet that at least one of these made you clench your fists and shout at the screen in disbelief. Go on, I dare you. Which fact that I just debunked do you refuse to let go of? I want to see the most stubborn, irrational defenses you can muster in the comments. Prove me wrong. And if you enjoy the satisfying burn of having your reality dismantled, consider this your official invitation to like this video and subscribe. There's plenty more where this came from.